Many people know Napoleon as a war god, but some people see him as a man that gained and lost complete control over France. At age 10, Napoleon was brought to a military school, which taught him discipline and how to be a leader. The Levian Masses was born in the French Revolution, meaning mass uprising. These rules were established by the National Assembly, which helped everybody follow by one rule. During the French Revolution, Napoleon decided to use The Scientific Principles by Jean-Baptiste Grimbeauville, which helped structurize all designs. During the late 18th century, Grimbeauville had an idea to reduce wing gauge, meaning the gap between the shot inside the diameter of the barrel. This would help make the mass lower and easier to move around. During wars, by using the scientific principles to help Napoleon win battles, this made him very successful in gaining ultimate power. After the French Revolution of 1789, plebiscite, a vote by the people decided on issues by an entire country or district, was popular in France because it was seen as a supreme power of authority. Because of the plebiscite, in 1804, Napoleon became the Emperor of France. This helped give the people a way to share their opinion despite their political party. This also helped Napoleon gain ultimate control over France. During the crowning of Napoleon, Napoleon decided to crown himself without the Pope's blessing. This went against all the Catholic traditions that were set for the king to be crowned. Also, Napoleon crowned Josephina as his wife, and not by her own right, but by his. Because of going against the church's traditions, it made Napoleon sort of like an outcast, which caused Napoleon to start losing his power over France.
Napoleon was able to gain power during his reign as emperor through the Napoleonic Code, civil service reforms, Louisiana Sale, and military victories. Napoleon rewrote France's laws, making it more understandable and added some new rules. He called this the Napoleonic Code. The code forbade privileges based on birth, allowed freedom of religion, and specified that government jobs should go to the most qualified. The code was written into 3 books. The civil reforms were similarly based on the Napoleonic Code. During the Revolution, many laws and rules were added and also changed. People found it hard to figure out the rules, and later the rules were codified so people understood better. Napoleon put the rules and laws strictly in the hands of the national government. Napoleon found education very important as well and made rules based on education. For example, allowing middle-class families to attend school. Napoleon also gained power just from the Louisiana Sale. This included the U.S. in purchasing new territory. The Louisiana Sale, also known as the Louisiana Purchase, was where Napoleon sold land to the U.S., doubling and expanding the size of the country. The treaty costed about $11 million and was signed on May 2nd. Napoleon was known as one of the greatest guys in warfare. He had fought many battles and owned a lot of land. People named him as one of the greatest commanders, though some people did not like him. He expanded the French territory from Russia to Spain.
During the Napoleonic Wars, Napoleon's reign went downhill. It first started on February 16, 1808, when Napoleon invaded Spain. Although he did not lose complete control of France from here, it really started with his attempt to make the continental system. The continental system was made to stop Britain export and re-export trade with Europe. Russia refused to implement this, but Caesar promised to implement. Because of this, the continental system caused great hardship in Britain. This system backfired on Napoleon when Caesar refused the continental system after 1810. And Napoleon launched the Moscow campaign in 1812. Napoleon first began to lose his battles when he went and began the Battle of Trafalgar. This battle was between him and Admiral Nelson. Admiral Nelson controlled the British fleet, while Napoleon was on the French side. When Nelson was the victor of this battle, it was one of his greatest victories, and his last. This made sure that Napoleon would never invade Britain. In 1812, Napoleon raised a massive army from all over Europe, the first of which entered Russia on June 24th. 650,000 troops ended up crossing the Niemen River to fight 200,000 soldiers on the Russian side. The Russians pulled back and let the Grand Army capture the city of Vilna. On June 27th, with barely a fight, to make matters worse, Grand Army soldiers were already deserting in search of food and shelter. In late July, the Russians similarly abandoned Vitebsk, setting fire to military stores and a bridge on their way out. They also retreated from Smolensk and torched the city. Along with the cities being burnt, the peasants also burned their crops to prevent the French from getting them. The Grand Army soldiers were coming down with insect-borne diseases such as typhus and water-related diseases, like dysentery. Rather than continue with the second day of fighting, the Russians withdrew and left the road to Moscow open, which was also engulfed in flames. After this, Napoleon was down to 100,000 troops. In late November, the Grand Army barely escaped complete annihilation and went across the frigid Beresina River. On December 5th, Napoleon left the army under the command of Joachim Murat and went to Paris, even with rumors of a coup attempt. Emboldened by the defeat, Austria, Prussia, and Sweden rejoined Russia and Great Britain in the fight against Napoleon. Napoleon won some initial victories against his enemies, but he suffered a crushing defeat in October 1813 at the Battle of Leipzig. In 1814, Napoleon, in the Treaty of Fontainebleau, is banished to the Mediterranean island of Elba. In 1814, Napoleon's broken forces gave up. Napoleon also offered to step down in favor of his son. The offer was rejected and he abdicated and was sent to Elba. In March 1815, he escaped the island and returned to Paris, where he regained supporters and claimed his emperor title. Napoleon's 100 days started with his escape from his exile. When Napoleon drove up to the Tuileries at midnight, he was greeted with enthusiasm. His purpose had always been to establish a federation of Europe, founded on liberal principles, but those plans could not be resumed without yet another war. When Napoleon sent Caesar the secret treaty between France and Austria, which he had found in Louis XVIII's desk at the Tuileries, the treaty was rejected by Caesar. He embarrassed Napoleon by mocking and burning the treaty. He declared that Napoleon was outside civil and social relations and renewed the Treaty of Chaumont. With all of this happening, Napoleon was reorganizing the French army, and by the 20th of March, Napoleon was in Paris with an army of 14,000 regular troops and a volunteer reserve of about 200,000. With this army, Napoleon was still not prepared to fight on French soil, so he took battle to his enemies. 1815, he was defeated at the bloody Battle of Waterloo. The defeat ultimately signaled the end of France's domination of Europe. He abdicated for a second time and was exiled to the remote island of St. Helena, where he lived out the rest of his days. He died at the age of 52 on March 5, 1821, possibly from stomach cancer, or some assume he was poisoned. These are some of the reasons Napoleon lost complete control of France.